Okay. Kelazhur is now a French hero. Bottom left, it is Clem. Top right, it is Kelazhur. I don't know why he's saying this. I did not see any chatter. They must have been PMing each other. So we got a TvT, best of 3 in this side of the brackets. This is a quarterfinal, not semifinal. Winner of this will be facing Showtime or a Laser. Should be quite fun. Get some bets going. Before any Reaper shenanigans happen, hopefully. And we have totally normal TvT openers, so back to Halloween. I don't know where the candy thing came from. Fun fact, my family ruined Halloween for the community. Not really, but they did ruin a tradition that was built up over a decade, which isn't too long, so it wasn't like a super big deal, but the community when we arrived was pretty small. There's like farms around it. Very uptight as well. Very much like stay-at-home mom has too much time on her hands, so involves herself in other business type of energy. Yeah. Just give like an overlook in the 90s of where I live. But up until the year 2001, which would be no surprise as to why this was up until that point, there is a thing where they would send like a card to every single house in like the little like mail packet that's not actual mailbox. Every place here is like a thing underneath the mailbox for just like random shit. And it would have a little like spooky saying, and then it would say that you'd have to give it to the next house. And I think you're supposed to include like a bag of candy with it. I actually don't really remember what it was. But in 2001, after both 9/11 and then eventually the anthrax scare, I think it was specifically the anthrax scare. So maybe it was later, but anyways, yeah, when we received that thing that we had received up until that point for 5 years, we moved here in 96. So for 5 years, we knew this was a thing. We received it again in 2001, and my dad called the cops. Which, I don't know, I was, 10 years old at the time. Maybe I missed something really important. Maybe he was right and it wasn't an appropriate thing to do after so much scary stuff was going around. I don't know, but I always thought it was quite a silly story because it was pretty much like almost expected, and it definitely wasn't anything like super scary. It wasn't like they were like piecing together newspaper articles saying we're gonna kill your family tonight or some shit like that. Like, anyways. Fun fact of the day. We do have Reapers and Hellions, as good old TvT do. And it looks like they both went for the same opener and the same kill so far. Both of them got the Hellion. Leave it to Americans to turn cool traditions into a reason to spend money. You mean Halloween? I actually think that's one of the less... Well, obviously it's still capitalistic and there's a lot of money that is thrown into Halloween, 100%. But I actually feel like compared to Thanksgiving and the subsequent Black Friday and Christmas, I really think Halloween is not actually that bad. I mean, the idea of, especially in the olden days, and like your parents are trick-or-treating, giving like 3 pieces of fucking licorice, all right, to the neighbor's kids, I mean, did not cost that much money. Oh, actually, this is a pretty interesting battle, isn't it? Both of them went for Medivacs. Kelazhur went for a tank. Clem went for a Cyclone. The Cyclone died, tank did not. Clem is going to continue trying to find damage, which with his micro, so far so good. Kelazhur is actually taking a bit longer to get across the map because maybe he just waffled in the middle, is what I'm going to assume happened. So the waffling has cost him a little bit of time to do damage, but I think Clem just lost his medevac. Wait, what the fuck is it? I don't know where it went. We'll check on that in a second. Medevac does go down on Clem's side of the map. Kelazhur left with just a tank and 4 Marines, very injured as well, but is still doing some damage. 9 SCVs of Clem have been killed. Make that 11 before everything is said and done. And yes, the medevac is still alive. I could not see it on the minimap. But it was stopped short of actually doing any real damage. Just enough units popped out for Kelazhur. Perhaps Clem, even though it took longer for Kelazhur to get across the map, then had to focus more on his defense than his offense. And multitasking and decision-making was a huge factor for the last 60 seconds here. Things calmed down absolutely in favor of Kelazhur. No doubt about that. He is ahead 7 workers. The army supply difference shouldn't be enough unless Clem really makes the magic happen, which is possible, but that was a bad start. Good pick up there. But yeah, 5 army supply difference does not break a defensive Terran. Unless they really... In this case, the problem would potentially be in spreading himself too thin. So if Kelazhur's tanks aren't covering each other, one gets interference matrix, like, it could do some damage. And actually, this is something. Getting a cancel on the 3rd CC is certainly better than nothing. But now having lost, well, never having air control, really. But also losing... What did that... Maybe it shot a Marine that was over there? How did that happen? Alright, never mind. Well, anyways, Kelazhur not having anything vulnerable to this tank positioning anymore. There you go. I don't think Clem can do too much more. This is... Okay, he's going to interference matrix, but a response with the auto turrets is really perfect here from Kelazhur, who's going to grab both tanks for the price of his one. And nothing really much more to worry about beyond that. Clem still behind 6 workers. His 3rd CC is done, however. Kelazhur's is only 60% thanks to that cancel earlier on. So is that going to make up for 6-7 workers? Not quite, but might make up for like 4. Yeah. This is not in a terrible position for Clem, honestly. I think in other matchups, this might be a terrible position to be down 7-8 workers, but... Already things have been put in motion to try and recover from that. Actually, a little bit of scuffle in the midpoint of the map around the bridge seems to be going favorably for Clem. Just the mass auto turrets he threw down a little more effective than what Kelazhur was able to push out. Maybe because his Ravens were a little less on energy. They're also very vulnerable now, both of them severely weak, and they're not going to be able to continue pushing forward. I said Clem might have won that one out, but... I mean, Kelazhur did lose his frontline fodder, but all of his tanks lived. His Ravens lived, and at the end of the day, I think Kelazhur's fine with that. Clem's also fine with that, though, is the thing. So, yeah, that's what's making it kind of funny. Like, that battle could have been much more instrumental, but it was just okay. They both kind of did the correct thing, I guess. So Clem took his little time to actually situate his 3rd CC, which means they really are getting it at quite the same time. But it's pretty close with my 4 worker comment. Now there's only a 3 worker difference. So, huzzah. It sounded like they mailed candies and labeled it not anthrax. Yeah, that would have been dumb. That Marine shot his gun faster. That's how that works. So Kelazhur once again going to try and push out on the map. I mean, he has had an economic lead for the last 2 minutes. So that should have rolled into a bit of an army supply lead. Certainly is rolled into an upgrade lead. And a production lead as well. 5 barracks already done for Kelazhur. Clem's still building number 4 and 5. But it is also pushed him to a 15 army supply advantage, which, again, not enough to break a defensive Terran unless they kind of screw up. I mean, the amount of supply you have to have over your opponent to assuredly break the defending Terran, probably in the realms of 40 or 50 even. I think 30 is when it gets really sketch for the defensive Terran, where they're like, they have to be really on point, but Maro certainly has shown us the power of defensive Terran comebacks. So I would say they have 40 or 50 is kind of that point where you can then feel like, yeah, I can do this. Already some good movements from both sides again. Got to give respect to both sides for how they're playing this one out. It's just that Clem has been behind. So having to disengage his tanks, knowing that they're going to interference matrix to open up the natural. It looks like Clem's going to take this opportunity to pounce, however. 3 interference matrices, taking out most of Kelazhur's tank fire, but then no repair on the command center, not till the very last second at the very least, means that the natural was successfully sniped. Clem does not even take an army supply advantage after that. He killed a lot of stuff, seemingly much better at killing the stuff too, because I mean, Kelazhur either wasn't firing with the tanks or his Marines were focusing the command center, but he still actually has not taken a supply lead, so that is bad news. If Clem was ahead now 20 army supply because Kelazhur had lost so much doing other things rather than trading out army, this game is still wide open. But Kelazhur now with a command center lead. Clem did finish up his, wait. Oh yeah, he finished up his 4th, he's rebuilding another 4th. Okay, there we go. I do believe Kelazhur has extended his lead tremendously, and now, well, there you go, 14 more SCVs also going down here, 15, and that'll do it, but that is still so much damage done, because Kelazhur, 4th command center done, 70 workers, also 2-2, about 50% done, I guess, when you average the 2 outs, even faster on his +1 vehicle weapons, which means he's faster with the +2, which reduces the kill shot of the Marine, and also has a air superiority thing going on. So he's got 5 Vikings, 2 Ravens still alive. Clem has 0 Ravens. Now these all still aren't enough to just A-move across and kill Clem. Kelazhur's got to be smart about this. Got to make sure that Clem doesn't claw his way back into the game, but assuming that he does so, he undeniably should win this game. Clem's going to try his best to find him out of position, just try to do so with a little pack of Marines, but Kelazhur was actually kind of doing ditto. He also was running across the map using his tanks to cover control back at home, his Marines to search out even more ways to get ahead, and he's the one that found it. 4th command center, brand spanking new one, gets sniped. Clem, 10 seconds difference there. If he hadn't actually sent that command center out, would have still been alive. But now, assuredly down to command center. Clem might at least pick up the kills on the Marines, but can't even do that. His Marines are inferior and in less numbers, so Kelazhur just runs away from the tanks. I mean, this is doesn't make you feel so good at this Clem side right now. Knowing that your full army can't even chase down a portion of theirs, it's not so good. At least Clem was able to find a moment to get 2-2. It is rather important. Also +2 on his tanks, which is by far his biggest benefit. He's got 12 tanks. That's gonna buy a lot of time, but I think Clem, he wanted to do Clem things for the last 2 or 3 minutes, you know, try and find his opponent out of position, try and do some drops, try and just get control of the narrative back, but I think now he's got to do whatever other Terran would usually be doing, which is going into your own Vikings, which is not a easy thing to say, by the way. Like, it's not like, "Doi, Clem, what are you doing?" But I do think it's probably his only option. By going to the Vikings, I do mean playing out to the late game. Like, I think that would be the only option for Clem, since he is now losing the late game, right? So what we'd see in a lot of other TvTs where Clem would be behind, input other people's names in Clem, so Maru, here, Marine, whatever. They would identify that they're pretty screwed, and then they would actually start building a Viking count pretty much after maybe even only 2 medevacs, but usually 4. And then they'd at least try to keep up with the late game pace, even as they stay 20, 30 supply below. What Clem did was, I mean, pretty much, 1, not able to afford really either choice, but then 2, wanted to try and mobilize, get out on the map, do something, make things weird, but as soon as you're pinned back like this, then your strategy is lost. You can't win against Kelazhur's composition unless you are also going for that same composition. Which, if he had been building up a steady number of Vikings over the last 3 or 4 minutes, it's possible that Clem would have had 7 or 9 Vikings to try and at least respond here, which doesn't mean he wins. Kelazhur might still have his 2 Ravens, you know, flexing, winning that battle regardless, but definitely if Clem's going to be on Marine tank on his side of the map against Kelazhur sieged up, with Viking control, there's not many options for Clem. Now, I know I'm talking about this and the supplies evened out, so you might be like, no, you're an idiot, but it's still the reality of the situation. Kelazhur lost a handful of workers, but is going up to 5 bases. Oh, I thought he was attacking his own units. And could still encroach if he just gets a Liberator to finally not be sniped, which has been a problem so far. And he does realize also what could Clem do in this situation. So it's kind of obvious what the person not going for the Vikings would do. They're going to try and go for a base trade. They're going to try and outmaneuver you. So Kelazhur scanned exactly where the army was, gets his reinforcements over to the left side. Not fast enough to actually protect his planetary, however. And this is how Clem finally gets his army back on the map. Kelazhur actually fully retreated, lost control over that bridge, which I don't know was actually necessary, but he really wanted to save this 5th base. When they come in from multiple angles, I said he wanted to save the 5th base, but he's actually not repairing it. It's coming in with quite the concave of tanks, but really mostly tanks at this point, which have got a siege to be most effective. Planetary still not being repaired. 28, 27, 4, 3, 2, 1, 8, 9, 6, 5, 4. Okay, he's gonna repair. I was overly ambitious to try and do a countdown from 20 seconds when it burns down that fast. Clem has managed to get a command center on the left side too, which I definitely don't think was supposed to happen. It is his main orbital lifted, so extremely vulnerable, but I mean, more power to him. But even when that looked like it might be relatively cost effective for Clem, it still was not enough. He really cannot reproduce fast enough. He's gonna try now moving his natural command center over, so he's at least saturated completely on 2 bases, as his 3rd is also starting to mine out here, so the pits of his economy, the dips that he's had. I guess it's kind of weird to say that on this map, but, you know, this is where he'd be dipping when Kelazhur is peaking. Anyways, have all contributed to him not even be able to afford every single Marine production possible, which they're pretty cheap, so you'd hope you're at least doing that. Couldn't even do that. If he had been producing 2 tanks, I guess 8 Marines. Is that how many you can build? You can build 9 Marines, actually. I think. Yeah, there you go. If he was building 9 Marines at a time the entire time after this engagement, I do think there's a little bit of momentum. And, you know, not to mention, if he had actually been able to go up to 6, 7, 8 barracks, if he was actually rich, yeah, I think that was a potential momentum breaker, but Clem's momentum was still in the gutter. It still was held back thanks to the economic disadvantage he's repeatedly had to deal with over and over and over again. Kind of a funny little battle going around this pillar, this ever-burning pillar in the middle. It's the Eternal Flame. The one that Clem is not going to be able to win. Kelazhur able with now 14 tanks of his own, so the situation is flipped there. Able to draw multiple lines in the sand, especially when he's got SimCity to help him out. Clem cannot get above 130 supply by the looks of things. He's lost all of his Marines, well, most of his Marines, so mobility's not really even on his side anymore. Is finally saturated on 3 bases. 56 workers ain't bad with 3 orbitals. That's not bad. But it took so long, I think it really missed the pivotal moment of potential break of the 5th base. If that planetary gets shot one more time and it dies, and then Clem has many reinforcements, like 20 Marines, 4 tanks, helping, Kelazhur might be caught severely out of position. And then maybe his tanks do siege, but then Clem moves over to some other side and Kelazhur is actually starting to panic. But there just wasn't enough in the bank for Clem to do that, so he's been always behind, always uphill battle. The fact that he made this even interesting after his 4th command center was killed, and that was after his natural was killed, is pretty impressive. You know, the natural being killed, but then Clem clawing his way back. I actually would not have been surprised by that whatsoever. I think that happens a decent amount of time in TvT, actually. But the natural and then the 4th just like, boom, sniped instantly. I thought that was pretty much nail in the coffin. But TvT, you know, it's a tricky little matchup, so. It's not over yet. Clem has finally even managed to go over that hump of 130. He's up to almost 160 supply. Gonna go for a big drop into the main base. Not exactly a doom drop, especially the number of tanks that would, I think, make it really doomy. And 1 tank in a siege in a really good location, but there's also 4 Ravens, 3 Ravens. So That's always going to be even more difficult to execute. If there were like 6 tanks, this could be a hard break, but Clem, he does have 8 tanks in total. He's moving across another location with most of them, which is the wise thing to do. I don't think a full-on commit to the main would have been a good idea if the guy is also still making Ravens, able to interference matrix. So, gonna try and again outposition, but it gets really difficult to outposition someone who can have 2 armies the same size as one of your armies. Now, those 2 armies are still very much dependent on control, but I think Kelazhur is good enough to do that. Is it even dependent on control? Apparently he can just aim with this one. GG. Is Kelazhur in North America? No. He actually hasn't been in North America for a very long time. He has been in Europe for years. He didn't even have to go back with COVID because he actually had a legitimate reason to be in Netherlands. If I remember correctly. Kelazhur is Brazilian, but lived in America for most of his life. Maybe? I think he moved to Florida when he was like 12 or 13. And then moved to the Netherlands like 3 or 4 years ago at this point. He's a world traveler. I also lived in California for a while. He's been playing all of the Latin Americas of the last 2 years with a ping disadvantage. Pretty sure. So he's doing a little swan dive right now. Loves the belly rubs. Never had a cat react so quickly all the time to a human hand by rolling over and revealing his belly, his weakest part. Most of my cats don't mind belly rubs, but none of them immediately roll over like this guy does. It's not exactly a trait for survival. What? It's a sweet kitten. Clem has 100,000 points from 3 people. Kelazhur has 10 points from 1 person. 1 believer. Liot SC2. They're about to get paid out big time. In the top left down a game, he is Clem. In the bottom right, it is Kelazhur, who won the early game. That's basically what happened there. I don't necessarily think Clem plays all that different for the first 8 or 9 minutes because of what happened in the first 5 or 6, whatever the tank drop was. I still believe that Clem would play out a TvT pretty similar to what he did after the tank did so much damage. His attempt to do the counter, right, just makes a lot of sense regardless of his damage taken. And then the way that he played it out when he got to 3 bases, try to get to his 4th. There just wasn't much for him to change. He just had to play TvT to the best of his ability, but down at the time, it was, what, 8 workers? And then 6, and then 4, and it's was recoverable, but he then made Terrible mistake with the natural commands are not being repaired fast enough. That was the big one. That was the absolute big one. If it was repaired fast enough, I don't believe the Marines kill it. And then he would have been probably really fine, considering how close the rest of the game got. Basically up until he was, 40 or 50 supply down. I think before that happened, he was certainly capable of bringing it back. But then that happened, and the command center died in the 4th base as well. And that's why I thought that was going to really be it. After the SCV kills, the natural command center, and then to also lose your 4th immediately, just, most ladder games, you probably tap out at that point, but TvT is a comeback matchup for sure. And Clem, definitely a little bit of not exactly a stubborn streak. I wouldn't say any player, well, most players who say in a game like that are stubborn, because I really think there was a very understandable, yeah, you can definitely do things here. No, for Clem, I always imagine that he's trying to prove himself. I don't actually think of the kid as a person when I meet him to be a person who has to prove themselves, right? That gets into dumb things, does stupid things to look brave, like I guess a lot of young men are accused of doing, right? No, I don't think Clem as a person is really like that, but in his play, his StarCraft play, I think he absolutely plays like he has something to prove. Like he either wants to show off a little bit, or he wants to be remembered as the guy that can do this thing, But if you ever met Clem in real life, I don't think you'd get the, you wouldn't, the person and the player they would not quite mesh in your brain, right? But at this point, we've seen so many interviews of Clem that we know what his person is like and what his playing person is like. So I do think he kind of just wants to prove that he can come back from that situation, as well as being a very realistic comeback situation. It was not at all impossible for him to find Kelazhur out of position, under-defended, making mistakes, what have you. Definitely a very winnable position, or comebackable position. Just for me, I always look at Clem, some of those games, it always kind of feels like, there's a little bit more there that he wants to show that the earlier mistakes were flukes. So that often means that the next game is it's like a rollover effect, right? Where it's like, okay, I couldn't prove that those early game mistakes were just, mistakes and I'm not going to make again, because it's going to be an entirely new game. But what I am going to do is I'm going to prove that map was a mistake. And I'm going to win this series, perhaps by even being Barbarian style, totally tearing Kelazhur a new one. That has happened. Clem has come back in series with vengeance. Certainly in mind. So we'll see if that happens here. That can happen very quickly in a TvT. If you do get a snowball effect going, sometimes it is a particularly brutal matchup. But so far, both of them safely on 2 bases, getting into their tanks. We're not going to have any of those extreme snowballs happen, but we might have another kind of odd situation. Kelazhur is going for the medevac. Clem going for the defensive Raven, more so. Also grabbing a 3rd CC on location, which is not so weird. On location on Moondance is not weird at all, but the fact that it is rather quick could be problematic. I think that did interrupt a potential factory unit, if I'm not mistaken, so I think. Regardless. Fortunately, as it is behind, he doesn't have to defend it, but defending the natural already proving maybe a little more difficult than he was hoping for. His one tank getting focus fired is not ideal, but fortunately, with some good concave, micro, and the help of an auto turret, Clem will manage to hold. And hold with taking out the medevac as well. If there's a medevac flying around with 3 or 4 Marines, that could still grab 2, 3 more SCVs, build a little bit of a mosquito bothering you in the room type situation. And instead, he now has to... He can actually wash his hands of Kelazhur for a couple of minutes at this point, right? The most that Kelazhur can probably follow up with is his own Raven harassment, which is certainly possible, but especially as Clem grabs Vikings, would be very dangerous. So... Also assuming that Kelazhur isn't following up with some weird 2-base attack, which is very unlikely. So, yeah, as I said, Clem can feel very confident for the next couple of minutes. Just know that he deflected that push. He must have the faster 3rd command center, and he absolutely does. Turning into an orbital as Kelazhur's 3rd is only 70% done, and getting his stim faster as well. So Clem actually ahead in many regards. Little Reaper harassment. Kind of. It does confirm what Clem was probably already suspicious of, which is that his third CC is faster, and Kelazhur's going to go into bio, would be the other thing you want to confirm. Maybe how fast the starport was put on a reactor can also be something to scout, compared to maybe, again, like faster barracks. I said he confirmed that it was bio. Yeah, he's also very unlikely that Kelazhur's going to be faking stim, right? So let's just go ahead and say he confirmed it. What he definitely didn't confirm was Kelazhur just already moving on forward onto a 4th command center, and I don't believe this is actually because of his situation in the game, where he is behind, and bigger, like more behind than you would expect. Like, the 2 workers doesn't seem like that big of a deal, or 4 workers now, or the 2 army supply, but the 1-1 already started, the stim finishing, so combat shield's also gonna be faster. Yeah, Kelazhur's behind. But I don't actually really think this is like a reaction to that so much as it is a understandable plan of action for Moondance. Maybe not from the literal start of the game, like, oh, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, and I'm going to really fast 4th command center. But if it was, it wouldn't be surprising, right? Moondance is a very macro map, despite being our shortest map in the map pool. Second shortest? I've forgotten which one's actually shorter. Point is very short, because it has that back base. So I think this just makes sense. And let's be real, TvT more and more pushes towards, if you get a 3rd up, you're gonna get a 4th. There's not a whole lot of, at least from what I've seen, it doesn't feel like there's as much, okay, 3 base to 3 base, really tight, locked in each other's grasp type of wrestling going on. It's like, okay, I get a 3rd, you get a 3rd. Okay, we look at each other, tank count. Okay, I can't break that. All right, 4th base it is. So it's also just not surprising considering the matchup right now. So Clem going to go for a double medevac drop into the 3rd base of Kelazhur. This is a nasty surprise. One of those things that almost guaranteed Kelazhur is going to have happen to him. Oh yeah, he was actually kind of predicting it once he saw the scan. And he's going to be like, of course, and probably put his Vikings there from then on, or maybe even build some missile turrets. The auto turrets come down, but at the cost of the Raven? 6-7 SC, well, more SCVs than that, yeah. Vikings to land. A lot of attention on this drop. I mean, that was still a very successful drop. 12 SCVs go down. Raven was killed. Vikings out of position. So they weren't bullying back these air units, which they could have. Kelazhur definitely has more Vikings, so that's exactly what they could have done. At the very least, they would have punished the Ravens for getting the interference matrix, right? Even if they couldn't have stopped it. So, yeah, very effective double drop. And even if that did put Clem back down on kind of an evenish supply, I think it would still be very worth it. As it is, with him taking down his opponent's tanks, it means that Clem is still up 20 supply. Also ahead on the 2-2 upgrades, getting his tank upgrade, 4th baser into a planetary, as I just spoke about it. And a 5th, already halfway done. Kelazhur is not too far behind him, though. Again, I think there was a clear direction for this game on this map, in this matchup, once the 3rd CCs were kind of agreed upon. It's like, yeah, you're gonna go 3rd CC? I'm gonna go 3rd CC. We're both going 3rd CC? All the CCs! Up to a point anyways. I think basically by the 5th command center it's going to get a little tricky to defend both left and right. But it wouldn't surprise me if they both solidify their 5ths and the real battle begins around the 6th. More forward placed positions. Okay, so Clem a bit quicker to the starports as well, but Kelazhur's really not all that far behind. Plus he just has more Vikings, been producing them more reliably. I mean, they're both on 4 bases. I mean, if Kelazhur wants to go for double armory, yes! Nailed it! I'm so good at this casting thing, but seriously, since they're both so rich, I really don't think you're picking and choosing to get double armory, double upgrades, the double-double, like you would be in another game. Just kind of admit that you're both going to be going into mass air, mass expansions. Not to say it'll be a turtle game necessarily. I mean, it's been a turtle game for the last couple of minutes, but it's not going to be a super passive game. But it's the direction we're heading, guys. So double armory, getting the air upgrade started faster, I think is great. I think Clem should be doing the same thing. But speaking of upgrades, another Clem double drop, this time right into the main base where you'd least expect it, the most obvious location. Grabs both of the upgrades for the bio. Gonna grab the one armory upgrade that was started. Thank God he has a backup. That's the real reason. And we'll grab a couple of those Vikings, more than a couple of those Vikings as well. A very good drop yet again. Whereas Kelazhur's little run by, or whatever you call this one, I think grabbed some reinforcements, but that was really, really it. Super effective drops from Kelazhur, and sorry, from Clem. And speaking of, you know, we're at this stage, why not do these things? Yeah, Kelazhur, why not a bunch of missile turrets? I know it's generally unlikely amongst like the very high level Terrans to actually mass produce missile turrets, especially before a comically late game stage, because of, you know, a couple of different reasons. One, the expectation that you're going to be able to respond with units, just being in position and knowing what your opponent's doing and so on and so forth. But then two, you know, certain points of the game you really shouldn't be affording 600 minerals, 1,000 minerals in turrets. That is a fact. No matter how many times you guys have built 1,000 missile turrets and been rewarded for it, you probably shouldn't have been doing it, but regardless. In this game, I feel like Kelazhur might want to go ahead and just slap down 1,000 minerals worth of turrets. But too late for that. More important matter is that he did just lose a bit of control over this land. Kind of had to last second respond to it. And with a last second response, has lost a decent number of those Marines. I think he's still rebuilding his Vikings anyways, but I think he lost a few more Vikings as well. And just all the repercussions of not being in position as fast as possible. You know the drill. But things are going to be very hard to end for either player. Even as they do reach towards like the 6th base, I think it's going to be hard to actually end this game. It's damn Terrans. Speaking of 6th, Clem is on one. Kelazhur is not, but Kelazhur still has quite a bank. He's been losing on the resources lost, but not to a crazy amount. But he has lost out on the upgrades. Holy shit. Oh my god. 2-2 starts is +3, well, armor. Oh, because his 3 attack is already done. Yikes. So Kelazhur, even if he were to take a good defensive battle, wouldn't even be able to really capitalize on it. That sucks. You were just locked out as Kelazhur from doing anything to your opponent until your upgrades are finished. It is that extreme. You know, a 2 upgrade difference, maybe you can make something happen, but a 4 upgrade difference? Forget about it. But, you know, since they're kind of both focusing a little bit more on the whole positional Viking tank thing anyways, it's possible Kelazhur chooses all the right moves. Doesn't have to use his Marines and his lack of upgrades. But these double drops, man. This time you can blame the lack of sensor tower, which was sniped, I believe, from the earlier attack, so that, you know, that happens to the best of them. Kelazhur definitely needs to rebuild them. That's a little more of a decision to make right here with the gas having to be involved with sensor towers. I still think using 500 minerals to build missile turrets. Oh, he did. He built so many of them. Okay, I'm so happy for that. But he definitely needs to afford at least 1 sensor tower. He is losing the positioning war. Really, he's losing the knowledge war, and thus the positioning war, right?
You are doing something right, Captain.
Yeah. Still not enough to say that he's gonna die, though. We are still 5 bases to 5. 6, sorry, I can count. We're still on 5 bases for Kelazhur, with a potential to max out again, and a good army, too. Like, there's, like... Clem is getting a better army with more Ravens, but it doesn't mean there's not potential for Kelazhur's army, when it also is maxed out. Is this the killing blow? Actually, Kelazhur thinks it is. He's gonna go ahead and give up. I would say that if this was a finals, not even like a grand finals of like Katowice, like not even that much pressure. If this was the finals of the Open Cup, maybe even. I think Kelazhur actually tries to hang on there too, but that is the like 7th time he was caught severely out of position. And he might have just been wanting to kind of let that game go. As well as understanding that that would be a tremendous deficit. Having to respond like he did. Like, he knew he would effectively die. But I still stick with, like, if this was the finals or a more high-profile game, I think you would try and still come back after that. You'd try and either clean it up, or you would just be like, okay, yeah, you got me again. Fuck it. Like, I'm gonna go across the map. And it wouldn't work, most likely. But I feel like he would have done it. But in that game, probably one of the more disappointing games that Kelazhur has played in the last 12 hours. He's like, whatever. Just gonna leave. We Shark, thank you for 27 months. Clem strikes back. Put the fan on. You know what? Also, since it's taking a little while, I'm going to be BRB in general. All right. I forgot that my bathroom is actually being renovated, so I had to walk much farther. Now tied up 1-1. Tropical Sacrifice. Kelazhur is proxying. That's the wrong button. Top right, Clem. Bottom left, Kelazhur. But he is proxying. I feel like Marauder proxies have really been in fashion more so lately. Woo! Hey, thank you very much, Twitch Women's Alliance, for the gifted subs. Taking advantage of the September gifted sub discounts, I believe. 25% off. But thank you for... Whoa, that's actually a decent... Oh, shit, man. I thought it was less than that. 20 gifted subs. I had to scroll up a lot to see that. Thank you very much, Twitch Women's Alliance. A team that I'm a part of. Fortunately, not going to go to TwitchCon this year. I'd have loved to have gone to the meetup. But, you know, I've actually already done quite a bit of traveling, so... Oh my god, is that another 20 gifted subs? Do my eyes deceive me? Or is that a total of 40 gifted subs? Holy crap. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Hot diggity damn. Dude, and another? Oh boy, there's gonna be so many gifted subs, we won't actually be able to talk about the game. 60 gifted subs in total. Back to back to back. That's a pretty baller move there. And Jacob Golan, taking pity on Liotz, gonna give the sub to them as well. Thank you for the gifted sub. And now let's take a moment to focus back onto the game. It is a Marauder proxy, which I was just talking about has become more popular. And Clem did not go for an SEV scout, but he did actually scout for the proxy, so he does have some advance notice, and that's really, in my opinion, all that it takes, at least for the pros. We will mishandle this drastically, but for the pros, all they need to know is that it is on the way, and they should be fine against it.
Received. Apparently,
so a bunker was made, which definitely solidifies the defense. Clem, you know, gonna have to be happy with that. I don't think he's really upset with how this has gone, actually, at all, even though he almost lost a Reaper. But the more, I guess, important issue is Kelazhur happy with this? He's the one that put the risk in. Has he been rewarded? Not so much, but maybe not as bad as it might seem. The contain factor is there, and actually, realizing the Reapers aren't here, that's a fairly dramatic loss of not just DPS, but also crowd control, right? 2 grenades would have bopped them away from entering into the main base for a couple more seconds. That can be a big difference maker. Enters into the main base, gonna start killing some SCVs. We do have the Reapers of Clem. They went for a counterattack, figuring that it was safe to do so. They grabbed 3 SCVs themselves, but the Marauders of Kelazhur still gonna be able to grab maybe just 1 more SCV before all is said and done. The mass repair should be able to save it. Marauders are terrible at killing SCVs, and that is going to be 6 SCVs in total killed. Cheekiest little Marine coming out right now and the kid. Oh, the Marine. Oh, let's get the SCV at the command center. Doesn't actually work out though. But 6-3, right? 6-3. Kelazhur comes out ahead by 4 workers, but his command center is later, so that's not necessarily going to be kept very long. But he does have 3 cyclones about to happen with the upgrade on the way. Thing is, the upgrade kind of is a long one. I'm not actually sure about the length of time it takes to get that upgrade versus, for instance, Marauder Slow, which I believe is a fast upgrade. But it feels like a tremendous difference. Maybe someone can go and check the database on that one. So what I'm trying to say is I feel like if this was a Marauder Slow upgrade timing, I think this would actually be a more popular upgrade in general. But you can see how this is kind of weirdly timed. I mean, I guess it will time out with a medevac, which might be the ultimate goal anyways, but then you really have to wonder if getting up to 4 cyclones before having that upgrade in a medevac is actually going to be worth it. It absolutely can be. I don't want to knock on cyclones too much, but they are very quickly beat by tanks. And more importantly, I guess, tanks that are in position. So considering that you can only pick up 2 cyclones and a medevac, there's a possibility here. Kelazhur could pick up 2, enter in with 2, probably kill the tank before it gets a second shot, which would kill the cyclones. 1 shot wouldn't. No, but yeah, the thing is that where are his other cyclones? They're all back at home. Yeah, I don't know. The thing is that 2 cyclones with the upgrade doesn't really scare me. 4 cyclones would scare me for like a blip. But then, as I was saying, like it had to be really well orchestrated, well coordinated. And then, you know, again, was it really worth it? Oh, nice lock on there. Almost got the medevac. Would have been nice for Clem. Oh boy. Hello Zerling, thank you for the 60 months, a full 5 years. Cap off the hype train. Appreciate it. That's a few subs. That's a decent few. Again, thank you Twitch Women's Alliance for dropping by. Okay, so the dust settles. We have now a more typical TvT with Stim on the way, Barracks on the way for both sides. Some would say that Cyclone opener follow-up, I guess in this case, follow-up into the Cyclone upgrade would be more indicative of a mech player. It could happen, but not Kelazhur. Urbis, thank you for the 2 months, and We Shark with 5 gifted subs, continuing that hype train. Got a real hype train going on, guys. It's a real boy. But seriously, thank you, especially for taking advantage of the September offer. Okay, here's one thing about 4 Cyclones with the upgrade, guys. Holy shnikes. Yeah, they're gonna kill a command center very quickly. Tanks were not in position to get any shots off. Quick thinking, I would say very quick thinking from Clem to actually use the interference matrix. I would have just laughed. If this was me streaming ladder game right now, I just would have been laughing at the absurdity of Cyclone lock-on damage. No doubt about it, they do a lot of damage. But more often, they're gonna grab a tank, which they were unsuccessful in doing so earlier. They're gonna maybe kill a handful of SCVs if they drop into the main or something like that, but they're not supposed to kill a command center. They absolutely can. So now that the dust has settled, Kelazhur going up to his 3rd CC just a bit later, now behind 3 workers. So Clem has had a couple of peaks there. We have Stim and 1-1 on the way for Kelazhur. I'm trying to find the right buttons. Stim's done for Clem, but he has yet to add on his 1-1. So Kelazhur's gonna find a good upgrade lead and a medevac drop into the main. Clem's gonna be pulled a little thin. He knows that he has to have at least kind of like 2 tanks. I feel like he's got to basically have like 3 tanks at all times against the Cyclones specifically. So 1 gets bop, and then the other 2 should be able to protect it kind of situation. Which would have happened here if the interference matrix didn't come along. But that's exactly what Kelazhur's plan was. He played that out very well. Grabs a couple of tanks and only loses a Cyclone. So Raven's still alive, actually still have energy. I'm kind of surprised he actually pulled back, but I think with the Vikings and the Ravens of Clem also returning to the front lines, that was probably the right call. So the drop did not do as much damage as I was fearing, perhaps because Stim wasn't quite done. But Kelazhur nonetheless still has that 1-1 advantage, evened up on the combat shields. And will have, if he starts with 2-2, a 2-2 advantage for sure. So Kelazhur, I mean, he's definitely done some good moves, but all said and done, hasn't really given himself a super big lead we might have been hoping for. A couple more mistakes, and Clem is easily behind. Biggest one, 3rd CC, right? That could have gone down for sure without some quick thinking. But other mistakes also could have been the loss of even more tanks. Yeah, there's kind of like a Sideshow Bob's up and on rake situation that can happen against 4 Cyclones with the upgrade, where like you lose a tank and you're like, oh, that was on me, my bad. I'll fix that next time. Lose a 2nd tank because another tank isn't protecting it, quite not in range, something like that. And you're like, oh, that was on me. Okay, hold on. 3rd time's charm. Another tank goes down because they sacrifice 1 or 2 Cyclones for it. And you go, oh, okay, whatever. Fine. All right, whatever. And then 4 and 5 tanks go down, and actually the tank count becomes a very big deal. That did not happen here. I just want to emphasize that it could have. There's even a moment where the Cyclone lock-ons just missed a tank. They got Marines instead. So that could have been a big issue. It is not. Clem actually has more tanks than his opponents, but now noticeably in the wrong position. This is a pretty quick response when it comes to the air. Once again, quick thinking with the interference matrix takes down those frontline tanks before they could siege up, so they were not impactful whatsoever. I guess they kind of body blocked for the tanks that were sieged, funnily enough, but that was quite a wild ride. It ends with Clem still ahead, 20 army supply, almost 30 army supply, while he is down now in workers. It's not by 17. The amount that he lost, he's only down by 4. So that looked way worse than it actually was. To get all of that army into the main base and for it to still not do that much damage, I mean, it really came down to, I guess, first and foremost, the most important thing was that Clem's air army wasn't that far away. So that was able to contribute with the interference matrix and the landing. And then 2, Kelazhur wasn't in the most brutal position to take advantage of the ramp, so Clem's army could actually get up without being immediately blasted in the face. So those 2 things combined means that Clem handled that about as gracefully as anyone could handle a Doom drop. And Kelazhur is probably scratching his head even a little bit and being like, huh, that really didn't work? Shit. Now he's the one that's in a lot of trouble. Only 3 tanks in the front line, about to be just, what, 0? Yeah, that 3rd tank's not in position. Wanted to pull the SCVs into it, not going to work out that way. 17 SCVs down now for Kelazhur. 3rd CC has to lift, might even die. No SCVs are coming to repair. The Vikings are on its tail. Yes, it does die. And Clem is giving himself a game-winning lead. There you have it, GG. Clem. Not going to go down here, not in the quarterfinals. Takes the series 2-1. Unfortunately, the person who really believed in Kelazhur will not be paid out today.